What is gravy, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Obtaining a platinum trophy in a game can require varying amounts of time. Some games ask you to sacrifice thousands of hours of your life in order to achieve this, while others can be done in as little as 10 minutes. But today we're going to be focusing on those at the longer end of the spectrum, at least for me, as I take you through 5 of my longest platinum trophies, at least according to my PS5. Before we jump in though, I do just want to clarify that I am limiting this to one game per franchise. I do not need more than one Assassin's Creed game on this list. But if you're going to enjoy this video, then make sure to hit that like button, and if you're new, consider subscribing. It doesn't cost a thing. Now let's get to it. Kicking things off with the shortest and most recent game on this list, Horizon Forbidden West is something that I was pretty surprised to find here. Maybe because I finished it all in 9 days. Obviously I already have a full video detailing all of my thoughts on this game, so I will keep this rather brief, but if you do want to hear more, go check that video out. What I will say is this genuinely didn't feel like it took as long as it did. A lot of the time when platinums close in on that 100-hour mark, the duration really does become apparent. Either because you hit a massive grind that brings everything to a halt, or the gameplay starts to grate on you because you haven't done anything new in hours. But with Horizon Forbidden West, I had no such moment, because while many will argue that a lot of the activities on the map are just busy work, and to an extent I do agree with that statement, I found the pacing between the story and side content to be rather well balanced. And because you don't need to 100% the game, you are able to tailor this platinum experience to your own tastes. If you enjoy the gameplay and want to engage in as much of it as possible, then you can do. You can go above and beyond, do all of the arena challenges, complete all of the rebel outposts, do every side quest. But if you're here for the story above all else, then you're also able to just mainline through that and do the absolute bare minimum of the side content. Now I don't want to diminish the idea that developers should be curating an experience for players, but there is a time and a place for that, and in a game of this type, having the freedom to achieve the platinum trophy without collecting a truckload of collectibles is a welcome change. Dragon Quest is a series that for the longest time has eluded me. In fact, quite a few JRPGs have spent their time on the periphery of my gaming world. But after playing the free demo on PS4 for roughly 5 hours, I absolutely had to jump into the full game. Let me say straight away that after roughly 90 hours of playtime, I still wholeheartedly recommend this game to anyone looking for that traditional style of JRPG. The characterization of your central party, outside of the main character, funnily enough, is phenomenal, especially my boy Sylvando. This circus star seems to start off as some sort of comic relief, but then once you reach his hometown and discover some of the things he went through, yeah, things start to really get a bit deep. And the gameplay itself, well, I absolutely loved it. It smacks of a series that, while maintaining a steady course, has been refined to the point of almost genuine perfection. In terms of story, there's probably not a lot you haven't seen before. You are the chosen one, you must band together with a plucky bunch of side characters in order to save the world from an ultimate evil, while also discovering some sort of ancient power deep within. But I do want to mention, there is a point, roughly about the halfway mark, and I'm not going to spoil it, but it genuinely did catch me off guard. And it reminds me of something else that has happened in a prior game, and I can't tell you what it is because it'll give it away. But trust me, it hits. As for the platinum, well, it's going to take a lot of time and energy, let me tell you that. The version I played through was the definitive one, and yes, this does matter because there are actual differences between the trophy lists. But they do follow a typical template of finish everything and collect all of the stuff, with just a sprinkling of max everyone's levels and abilities, and you know what? I'm fine with it. There are a couple of annoying trophies, one of which includes winning big in a casino, but the one that will take you the absolute longest time is Dedicated Follower of Fashion, which asks you to acquire every piece of appearance-altering equipment in the game. Now while this does sound rather straightforward, one of these items is actually given to you as a reward for finishing all of the post-game quests. And in order to defeat the final secret boss at the end of this quest, you'll have to grind like your life depends on it. And what makes this take so long is that the only really efficient way to grind in this game is to defeat one very specific enemy that has a habit of bailing the second the fight begins, which means you find yourself reloading just as much as you are grinding. But despite all this, I still fully recommend this game, and it's absolutely cemented itself as one of my favourites of the last few years, which is not something I say lightly. Except I will also say that about our next game, Yakuza Like Dragon, which ironically is a Yakuza game based on Dragon Quest. And much like our previous entry, it hits all of the right notes for me in terms of characters and gameplay. The contrast between Ichiban and the rest of the party is really welcome, because while they are much more grounded in reality and all of the hardships that come with that, Ichiban has an almost childlike optimism that really does bring out the best in all of them. I won't go too much into the finer details of the game though, because in terms of gameplay it is essentially a Dragon Quest game, albeit with weapons and abilities that utilise everyday items and professions. And a chicken. But the story is what gets you here, filled with betrayals and twists and just everything you could possibly ask for from this type of narrative, with some equally emotional moments thrown in as well just to keep you on your toes. This holds true through the side quests as well, with each of them feeling like miniaturised versions of the main quests with their own engaging characters and wacky sensibilities. That brings us to possibly the biggest compatibility test with this game though. It's not whether you enjoy the combat or the story, but rather whether you gel with the zany comedy that runs through the veins of every Yakuza game. If you don't find it funny to hit people with sex toys or fight a chimp riding a digger, yes, that is an actual boss fight, then you aren't going to enjoy this platinum, because it does task you with doing absolutely everything in the game. And the one thing in this game that will take you the longest to complete is the final dungeon, as is expected in a huge JRPG. In order to prove strong enough to overcome said mountainous challenge, you must firstly get all characters to the max level of 99, which is pretty doable, and then obtain all of the characters' ultimate weapons, which requires some rare items but is also pretty doable. And then on top of that, you have to get at least 3 jobs to the max level for each character, which is slightly longer but still doable. And then you have to actually finish the final dungeon in one sitting, because if you die at any point you go right back to the beginning, and at the end there's a boss that not only enjoys summoning other bosses to fight you, but also uses Ichiban's ultimate ability against you. So when I say this takes a while, I mean it. I'm starting to notice a trend with these games, because this one is also a JRPG, although this one does differ greatly from the others. Final Fantasy VII Remake was one of the standout releases in 2020 and one of the most anticipated games of the last decade. I still remember seeing that first reveal trailer way back when. And so naturally I jumped in the second the game came out. What I didn't expect though was to still be there over 100 hours later, finishing one of the most enjoyable platinum experiences I've ever had. Before anyone gets carried away though, we aren't going to be talking about the story here. The details are already very well established and there are multiple videos online discussing the topic, but I do have to mention how I feel the game's linear presentation worked to its own benefit. Because so many games nowadays feel that they need to shoehorn in an open world for players to explore at their leisure, even if it's to the detriment of the overall experience. So it was actually quite refreshing to see such a large AAA title opting to go for this type of approach, especially considering previous titles in the franchise had steered heavily into that open world mindset. Now the game itself isn't a very long one. I think my first playthrough clocked in at a little over 40 hours give or take. But the kicker comes from hard mode. In the past I have voiced my disdain for having to unlock difficulties in games, but here I am going to give it a pass, because for the hard mode run it is absolutely recommended to do on New Game Plus, and secondly because this mode is just immensely satisfying. Rather than artificially creating difficulty by just increasing all the numbers, this challenging mode actually restricts gameplay mechanics that you become reliant on in your first playthrough, and thus forces you to think strategically and methodically in order to get through the levels. You're constantly forced to weigh up the pros and cons of using an offensive spell in a tough fight, because that might restrict your healing in another fight later on, which adds this level of tension to even the easiest of encounters that other games just don't manage to do. This is, however, where the playtime really starts to mount up. My overall platinum time came to around 120 hours, which means I spent roughly 2/3 of my entire time on this second run, albeit with a lot more cleanup. And this is because of two main things. wearing each of the dresses for Don Corneo, because you definitely need to look this up, trust me. Don't try and work this out on your own, because like me, you may end up screwing yourself and having to do it 4 times instead of 3. But also because of the boss gauntlet. Now I won't spoil it for anyone that is yet to jump into this game, but needless to say, having to finish 5 difficult fights back to back without items or MP replenishment is ludicrously tough. Almost to the point of giving up tough. For some comparison, I managed to beat the final boss on my hard mode playthrough first time, whereas the 4th fight in this boss gauntlet, when I made it there, annihilated me time and time again. If you have this platinum, I absolutely tip my hat to you, because the level of perseverance to get over that difficulty spike is absolutely no easy feat. Okay, final game of the day, and I have to say, it's anticlimactic. Like incredibly so. Because while I have adored every game on this list up to this point, this is one that I could have absolutely done without. Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I feel like I've dogged on this game enough for one lifetime.
Yes, you really have.
But as it's managed to cruise its way to the top spot of this list, I have no choice but to talk about it once more. And honestly, after over 130 hours of traipsing across the muddy plains of England, with the odd snowy jaunt around the Norwegian fjords, it's become somewhat of a recurring nightmare for me. But we're here to talk about trophies, so let's just get this over with. This game is long, which shouldn't surprise you given A, my previous statement, and B, the fact that it is a modern Assassin's Creed game. And it's long not just in terms of the actual tangible time it takes to finish the game, but also in the toll it takes upon your mortal bones. There were times where I could literally feel the life draining out of me as I cleared every last speck of content from this in-game map. In fact, things got so bad getting this platinum that by the time the end credits rolled, I had all but given up on the actual story. If you quizzed me on the last 5 hours of the main campaign, I would probably get them all wrong. Because despite the positive things this game did bring to the table, and it did have some positive things, it was fundamentally too damn long. Much like this video, so let's wrap things up. Okay, so there you have it, 5 of my longest platinum trophies. Let me know down below in the comments which platinums took you the longest. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you want to see more, there is another video right over there, and I shall catch you all next time.